Hi, everyone. So it's great to be here and have an opportunity to chat a little bit about our social innovation programs, but also really what is social innovation. I think it's one of those buzzwords you hear a lot, but you don't actually maybe fully understand what a program in social innovation might be. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen so y'all can see some slides here. There we go. So let's just dive right in. So if folks aren't familiar, just a quick rundown on the School of Social Innovation. So we are founded in 2016. So we're a relatively new school, a new program. And we were the first university department in social innovation and to offer sort of a full suite of degree programs in social innovation. So you can take programs with us starting at the bachelor's right up into the PhD. And I think something that really connects all of our programs together is this blend of theoretical and practical. So really understanding issues, but then also building practical tools and strategies to go out there and make change in your communities. And so that approach is really sort of founded on, critical analysis, right? So really getting to the roots of why do we have these different social issues? Why do we have persistent inequality, the climate crisis? Understanding those from sort of a social science perspective, but then combining that with practical organizing and management tools to do something about it, right? So our primary purpose, the kind of raison d'etre of our school, is to train people who want to create transformative change and to ensure they have the skills and understandings and knowledge to do that. So this is a question that I get asked a lot as a professor in the School of Social Innovation. What the heck is social innovation, right? I think we see it a lot, just kind of in pop culture. We see governments talking about it. There are many different ways that people talk about it, lots of fancy diagrams that show, it's a combination of this and that, and it's this process. And it can all get a little confusing and a little muddling for people. So this is a definition that I really like to use that for me really distills what are we talking about, and specifically when I say we, here in the School of Social Innovation, what are we talking about? And so social innovation involves collective action to satisfy neglected human needs, transformation in social relations, and the empowerment of citizens to work towards socio-political transformation. And so for me, that really captures those three elements of we're working together to identify and address a persistent need in our community, a consistent issue. We're trying to do that by transforming social relations, right? So we're looking at questions of power and how we have the ability to participate or not in society. And we're seeking to empower members of our community, right, to do that. So I think that's a really great way for me to kind of unpack what do we mean when we're talking about social innovation. It can look like, a million different things. That's one of the wonderful things about social innovation, is it's not specific to just, the environment or politics or the media, right? We see people working together to address different needs in a whole range of sectors. So these are just, a few examples of what social innovation can look like in practice. So we've seen community fridges emerge as a really interesting response to providing free, accessible, barrier-free food in our community, so everyone has access to that basic human right. We've seen a lot of wonderful social innovation in social movements, right, in protest movements, demanding for change using really interesting tactics and strategies. Intergenerational housing has been a great response to the housing crisis and people not being able to find affordable places to live, but also addressing issues of isolation that many of our seniors face in our community. So I'm not going to run through every single one of these. The list could go on for hours, but just to give you an idea that the examples and kind of on the ground practice of social innovation that we see in our communities is really quite diverse. And you probably come across little instances of social innovation in your everyday, and you might not even realize it. A few things that I think really tie together both thinking about and practicing social innovation is critical analysis, action, and experimentation, right? So again, critical analysis is really understanding and recognizing that there is a social need, that there's something that's not right, right? We often have sort of like something is not right, like something's not happening the way that it should. A group of people are being left out or not being treated fairly. So we use our critical analysis skills to identify, okay, there is a social problem here. And then we identify a path of action, right? We identify what would be effective tools and strategies to work together to make that change. And then we often have an element of experimentation, right? So as part of the solution to that social problem, we might seek to build a new community group, or we might try to create a new organization. We might create a worker cooperative, or a housing group, or a neighborhood association, right? So we're often talking about the creation and formation of different ways to work together and build together in our communities. When we talk about social innovation, we can have different scales of social innovation, right? So sometimes we might be operating in terms of just trying to change people's perceptions of something, right? We might be trying to change people's attitudes or everyday behaviors on a particular social issue, right? So it might be climate change, right? Just trying to change everyday behaviors that people have that have an impact. Or we might be trying to change people's perceptions of people who face homelessness, right? Trying to address some of the stigma associated with that. Or we can sort of move up this triangle. We might be looking at a higher scale of actually trying to shift relationships, right? So there we might be thinking about groups of people and how they relate to one another. Or we could be looking further up, actually trying to change processes, institutions, or structures of society, right? So there we're looking at much broader scale change. We're trying to change maybe ways that government operates. We're trying to change the behaviors of corporations. We're trying to change laws, right? We're really looking at kind of that big picture stuff and how can we shift the ways that those fundamental structures in our society work. So on the one hand, we can think of scales of social innovation, scales of change, and then we can also think of scopes of change, right? So sometimes in social innovation, we're just looking to make incremental changes, right? We're just looking to try to make small changes still within the system, right? Again, looking more at that sort of attitude or behavior level change. So we're working maybe one-on-one with people, we're working, with residents in our neighborhood to try and bring about an incremental change that still is important, that still has impact, right? But a sort of working within existing systems just to try to tweak, to try to shift something. Then we can also talk about institutional change, right? So there, the scope of change getting a little bit bigger, right? We're talking about modifying or enhancing structures or institutions. So there again, it's not just incremental one-on-one, we're actually looking to try to change institutions, right? So it could be universities, right? We might be trying to change the way that our education system works, right? We might be trying to change the way that our healthcare system works, right? We're definitely seeing in the Canadian context, a lot of conversations about how to make our healthcare systems better, right? And then on the far end of this sort of continuum that we can see, we're talking about disruptive scopes of change. So that's really we're trying to change systems and structures. We're talking about large scale changes to our society. So those are just, two different ways that we think about social innovation in terms of scale and scope. So one thing that we really try to emphasize in talking about, what is a critical or sort of transformational approach to social innovation is that often when we talk about and think about a particular problem in society, we're really only scratching the surface. And so we find the sort of iceberg visual, a useful visual to help us unpack some of that. So say, in the media, maybe there'll be a short story talking about poverty or homelessness, right? But we only actually get to see just the top of that issue. And actually, to have an effective social innovation approach and practice, we need to go beneath the surface and understand all the different ways that all of these other elements actually influence and shape what we see on the surface, right? So maybe if we're talking about homelessness, we need to look about the housing crisis, right? We need to look at, okay, well, what social assistance programs are being offered? What is the culture around, people having access to housing? Are there barriers in how we think about it that needs to shift? Is there a certain social policy that is providing a barrier? Is there actually gaps in our mental health or healthcare sectors, right? So it's really going below the surface and seeing how all of these other structures and systems and institutions actually influence what we see as a particular problem or issue in our society. So this is just another visual to get us to think about that. So this was a visual created to talk about the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and Two-Spirit folks in Canada, which is a long-standing, really important issue that I think we're just beginning to fully understand it, right? And so this visual was created to really emphasize that, again, we see that issue as just a surface issue, but to truly understand it, we have to go back and actually look at the roots and dig below the surface and look at how that issue is connected to all of these other issues, right? It's connected to poverty, to intergenerational trauma and harm, is connected to different political laws like the Indian Act, right? Is connected to ongoing practices of colonialism and racism, right? Policing institutions, our jails, right? So that to understand that one issue, there's actually all of these other branches and then trunks to that issue, and then actually going below the surface to the roots to really understand what is happening. And then that understanding can then inform how we're going to respond in new, creative, and collective ways. One thing that I always like to mention to our students is we often assume that social innovation means something new, right? Something that's never been done before, never been thought of before. And that's often not the case. Often we're drawing on histories of collective action, right? We have an incredible history of residents, of citizens, of communities working together for change, and we can really draw on that history. So this was an example that sort of in the news recently, right, during the COVID pandemic. The schools were closed, and so there were all these conversations around alternatives to still providing education. And there were some people who said, hey, look, there was this really great social innovation that happened almost a year ago that was about open air classrooms, right? That in another health crisis, they switched schools from being inside to actually going out in parks and in forests and having education spaces and classes there. So often we can draw inspiration from things that have already happened, right? So social innovation doesn't necessarily need to be, oh, I need to come up with a new idea that's never been thought of before. I think one thing that really unites the practice and theory of social innovation is a refusal to accept things as they are. So I think this is a great message that comes from Tank Girl. So this is a comic that was written. Tank Girl is a character in sort of this post-apocalyptic world that is really trying to make things better, right? So she has this great quote, and I apologize in advance for the language, but I think it fits the moment, right, when we're talking about the crises that we face. So Tank Girl says, I can't let things be this way. We can be wonderful. We can be magnificent. We can turn this shit around, right? And so it's really that commitment to say, hey, things are not okay, but we can do something about it. And we're going to refuse to allow things to continue in the way that they are. This generally involves a commitment to working together. So I love this quote from Hassan, who is a migrant justice activist and organizer here in Canada. And so he writes, one person can't change anything, but a few people working together in camaraderie certainly can, right? And so social innovation, that social part, right, really is about working together and saying that social change and social transformation is about working together to address those social relations, to address those power dynamics, to bring about a transformation that works for everybody. So I want to just take a couple of minutes and run through the different programs that we have. I know people are joining this info session, may be interested in the BA, the graduate diploma, the master's, the PhD. So you can find more information about each of these programs on the St. Paul website, but I'm just going to run very quickly through each one of them to give you a sort of a one-pager depending on your interest. So first up, we have our bachelor's program. So it's a 4-year program that is really drawing on social sciences and management studies, really with an emphasis on experiential and community engaged pedagogies, right? So it's really about critical thinking, social action, and democratic management, right? How can we understand social problems, to build collective action, to do something about it, and to think about how we create organizations and groups in ways that are more inclusive, more open, more democratic, more non-hierarchical, right? So this program has some interesting sort of pedagogical elements that I'll just highlight briefly. So the first is that the first 2 years of this program is in what we call an intensive block format. So I'll give you an example of what that looks like. So instead of taking 5 courses at a time, which is sort of the usual method for your undergraduate studies, you take 1 course at a time intensively for 3 weeks. You finish that course and then you move on to the next course, same thing, 3 weeks intensively, and then you move on to the next course. So it really allows us and our students to focus in, be immersed in a particular topic, have the space and flexibility to do lots of interesting projects, have visits, go out into the community. We immerse ourselves, we dig deep into that particular topic, we finish it, and then we move on to the next. Another interesting thing about this program is it has at least 1 internship. So all students at the end of their second year complete an internship as part of the program. You also have the option of doing a second internship in your 3rd and 4th years of studies if you so choose. And so it's really a program. We have small classes and there's an emphasis on collective projects and actually putting the theory, the concepts that you're learning into practice. So next up, we have our graduate diploma. So this is a 1-year program and it's really focused more on professional development. So it's folks who perhaps have been out working for a nonprofit, working in the public sector, doing things in the community for a few years, and they want to just build up some of their skills and capacities. Maybe they want to make change in their own organization. Maybe they're interested in creating an organization of their own. They've sort of had some experience in the workforce and now they want to bring some change to that. So it's 5 courses, so it's 1 year, and at the end of the course, you have sort of a final project that is structured around, like I mentioned, either developing a new project or organization or proposing sort of recommendations for an existing one. So there's a variety of courses that you take, and then you sort of work towards that final project. Next up, we have our master's. So this is a 2-year program, and compared to the graduate diploma, it's much more focused on critical theories and engaged research. So there's both a thesis option or a course-based option, depending on sort of what career path and trajectory you're interested in. All students complete a research internship as part of the program. So again, giving you some hands-on experience, either working with our own research center or another research-oriented organization, but getting some on-the-ground experience. And is really structured around these 4 key thematic areas: social action, theories of emancipation, democratic management, and engaged pedagogies and research. Last up, we have our PhD, the most ambitious of programs. I know it's not for everyone, but for those of you interested in pursuing doctoral studies, perhaps an academic career or a research career, this is a 4 to 5 year program, again, really focused on critical theories, engaged research. We certainly have most of our students using some sort of community-based participatory research methods. You obviously, the thesis is mandatory. This is a very research intensive program, and it's structured around those 4 key themes, as is the master's. So again, social action, theories of emancipation, democratic management, and engaged pedagogies and research. So last up, we often get this question. Maybe this is a question that your parents or family members are asking you if you're considering this program. What can you do with a degree in social innovation? And so we typically see our students who graduate working in sort of one of 4 areas. Many of them go into nonprofit and charitable sectors, right? Either at the local level doing community development, sometimes at the provincial or federal level doing more sort of public advocacy, outreach, policy work. We also see our students go into the public sector, right? Social innovation is an area that is increasingly on the radar of municipal governments, provincial governments, federal governments. They're looking for folks who know how to engage with citizens, with residents, with community members. They're looking for folks who have that social innovation lens to revise and develop policy. We also see folks going into the private sector, right? Sometimes this could be social entrepreneurship. That might mean starting your own cooperative, your own social enterprise, or it may be working with an existing company, building out their corporate social responsibility portfolio, working with foundations, social impact organizations. And then finally, we do have some students that go on to further academic studies, right? So it might be the master's or the PhD, looking to further kind of that research or academic trajectory. So super quick, two last things I wanted to highlight about our social innovation ecosystem here at St. Paul. In addition to the school that sort of houses our academic programs, we have the Atelier, which is a nonprofit organization housed here at St. Paul that is a space for students to interact with community members, with other organizations, to get training, to collaborate with folks, to build their skills, to attend events, to really make that connection with community. And if they have project ideas, that's a place where you could just hit the ground running and get some of those skills, some of that support, some of that mentoring to make it happen as you are going through your studies. For those of you interested more in our graduate programs, we do have our research center on social innovation and social transformation. And again, it's really a space to connect with other researchers, emerging scholars. We hold a biannual colloquium. We do a frequent seminar series, brown bag lunches. So it's an opportunity for you to share your own research as it develops, to connect with other both students, but other emerging scholars at other universities in Ontario and Quebec, and sort of begin building a network of scholars in your particular field. So with that, that gives us sort of a rundown both of the field of social innovation and what that looks like here at the School of Social Innovation. So thank you very much for joining us. And we're certainly available for any questions now, or you're welcome to email me. I put my email there. It's also available on the website if you want to follow up at another time.